Yo, what up guys? Welcome to Jack's Off to another adventure. So today I'm back home in San Francisco's Chinatown and I'm with my buddy Coach. And as Chinatown enthusiasts, we were privileged enough to be invited to check out the Chinese Historical Society of America Museum to learn more about the Chinese American history. So if you're curious about the history of the Chinese people living here in America, then join me as Jack's off to the Chinese Historical Society of America Museum. Whew, let's go.
Oh, wow. Wow.
The museum, the building was built in the 1930s by Julia Morgan, the famous architect. And we took it over in the 90s. We moved in 2001. And so it's this historical building. There, Theo's turn the lights on for you.
Oh, nice.
And we have our gallery, which is in there, and then we have two more galleries over here. But because of the coronavirus and closed, we took the opportunity to actually start to reorganize the inside. Museums never had a chance to really get back and reorganize. So we've been doing that. And I've been involved in this museum for 2 months. And I just very new here as executive director. So I'm really excited to be able to kind of be involved in this way. Because the first thing I was like, let's reorganize the whole place because it's disorganized. You know? What I can do is show you a tour of the museum and show you like all the back behind the scenes things, which might be cool for your vlog anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, look at that.
Wow.
How did we not know about this place?
Check out this dragon floor. Wow. It's a bit messy, guys, but yeah. Check out this garden.
Everything's off right now, so we're looking to turn this back on. If any of your fans out there want to be donors to the museum, we have naming opportunities for the fountain, and we need some more funding to bring it back to life. So talk to me. Hi, my name's Justin. I'm the executive director here at CHSA, Chinese Historical Society of America. And my son just brought me some candies. Thank you, Theo. Here you go. You can have them.
Aww. Never seen a kid don't want candy.
Yeah, he gave me the candy. That's cool. So right now you see his mess here. The museum is undergoing a bit of a renovation and a reorganization. So that's what you'll see a bit today is in some of the intermediary spaces, not the galleries themselves, but intermediary spaces, we're doing some reorganization. So please excuse the mess.
Oh, no worries.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Are you able to tell us what's happening here?
So what's going on here, Theo?
We try to tell the story of immigration and social justice and equity, inclusion, and what it means to be a diverse American. And so our museum exhibition begins here. We're talking about trade, global trade, the 1700s, late 1700s, 1800s, and what goods people wanted back in the day. So, there was fur, ceramics like China, right? Opium was a big one that kind of started the trade imbalance between U.S. and England, actually, and China. So basically the Chinese had a lot of the materials we wanted. We wanted their furs, we wanted their ceramics, we wanted their, their products. Hence the word like China, right?
Yeah.
But we didn't have the silver, like England didn't have the silver to pay for it. So, but China had a lot, they wanted silver. And so what we did, and I say we in the larger sense of the colonial we, like the English, British Empire, and later the U.S., is we sold them opium, got them hooked, and then, took their silver and then gave them silver for their goods. So that was the whole, strategy around, late 1700s, exploitation and colonization of the Chinese Empire. So, you kind of, with that, later in the 1800s, you get a strong push-pull effect of the Chinese coming into America because there's famine and war in China and there's opportunities in the United States. So we start to move through our museum. And we have an exhibition right here. We'll talk about the different boats that were in the harbors at the time. And so this is a painting done in a Western tradition, but it depicts, the various flags, Swiss, British, U.S., and the various types of boats. So you'll see there's, so this talks about the older, now we get to Manifest Destiny. So this is about people moving from the East Coast to the West Coast and what that meant for establishing the West. So this exhibition really has a lot of, discussion on the bigger picture of what it meant to be, establishing a diverse America. So here we're talking about, transcontinental, obviously the railroad. You see like the coming man, you see the Chinese coming in, right? Yankee versus Yankee. So you kind of get this picture of Manifest Destiny labor conflicts. So you'll see each of these displays, for example, will show historical photographs,
Wow.
you know, that discuss like labor and conflict. Here we have one about the Chinese in New England, a workshop. You know, so you can learn a lot here about the history of the Chinese in America.
Uh-huh.
The exhibition continues this way. We talk about early immigrants and the Chinese in the U.S. So here are some very early immigrants from the 1800s even.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we get to kind of see some of these interesting names, you know, coming from Guangzhou, because most of the people during that time period were Cantonese,
yeah.
Guangdong region.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and then over here we have a bit more about the railroads. So we have some artifacts from that time, you know, about building the railroads. These were tools that some people used, you know, like the pipe that you smoke, the bowl that you used to eat with, the bowl, the pot for, the vase for drinking, you know. And then we have these paintings. These are by Jake Lee.
Uh-huh.
And they're original watercolors. We worked very hard in our collection to purchase these and to collect them. And they are, they depict colorful interpretations of old life in America. Now, they're not historically accurate, which is important to point out. This practice of hanging in baskets and chipping away at the walls so they could make the railroads never happened.
Okay.
So all the slopes along the entire railroad area are no steeper than 75 degrees. That's the
Wow.
grade. There's no cliffs that are carved out like that. But you would need to have a 90-degree cliff to hang a basket over, or somewhere similar to that.
Right,
70
right.
degrees, you can't hang a basket.
Yeah.
So this is an interpretation that was like created during the 50s and 60s, and he tapped into that, the painter did, Jake Lee. This never happened. So Historical Museum, it's important that I say this is an artistic interpretation and not the reality of life during that period.
Okay. What about this one right here, though?
Well, so yeah, this one is a gold mining scene. So this is more typical. You know, you don't see any kind of exaggerations here. You see a typical house, the water wheel, and then the panning gold mining. So this is more of what you would see.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then over here we get a nice timeline of the Exclusion Act and things like policies of exclusion.
Uh-huh.
So all these dioramas were created as like depictions of actual cartoons at the time.
Ah, okay.
So this one, so if you notice the walls here are built to look like this drawing.
Yeah.
And this is the anti-Chinese wall drawing that went up in Puck magazine in 1882.
Wow.
So you can see they're building wall with prejudice, laws against race, jealousy, and anti-low wages. You know, so fear, competition, you know, congressional mortar. So the congressional mortar is putting together the blocks of prejudice, racial laws, laws against race, jealousy, fear, you know. So it's the history of the 1882 Exclusion Act.
Oh, yeah.
So that was a very important one. That was the first policy that said that people of a certain race couldn't enter the United States.
Uh-huh. I think that's the only law too, right? So
Well,
far?
there have been other ones too. There was 1875, the Page Act, which said that women couldn't come in who were Chinese because they were considered to be prostitutes at the time. So they had to prove high moral authority. So, you know, it continues on to discuss the machinery of exclusion.
Wow.
You know, this area you're looking at right now talks about the Chinese educational mission, and like, you know, there's a lot of missionary work going on, and this is the historical YWCA, which is the Young Women's Christian Association building. So where we're standing was like a Christian building, so there was a lot of missionary work going on at the time. So
Okay.
I don't know much about that though, frankly.
That's why.
Not my area of expertise.
Wow.
So this area is really fun. So this is, the table is not on, it's a projection that goes down on the table. I'm sorry that's not on.
I don't worry about it.
Like I said, we're closed right now, so some of these, you know, there's some work we need to do.
Yeah, no worries.
This is a lot of fun. You can, you know, when it is open, you can hear the typewriter going. You know, you can learn about the history of how they would interrogate immigrants coming into the country. You know, and then you can learn, you can see some actual files of people.
Oh, wow.
So this is like querying Chinese merchants in transit. You know, so it shows the actual discussion of, you know, the ticket agents giving them tickets and, you know, where they came from and everything. So, you know, it's not participatory, but interactive sections. And there you can see immigration documents that people.
Wow. So this happened in Angel Island, right?
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah. So this one's cool. So they used to send coaching documents
Inside
of fruit. So
oh, wow.
the family would give coaching documents like, okay, to prove that you're part of my family, to come into the States, you have to say these things. And they'd give them cheat sheets, and they would steal them inside of fruits. Like
Wow. That's smart. That's like the mooncake.
yeah, right. Card out the bottom or something. So what you're seeing right now is the barracks that are a recreation of Angel Island.
Ah,
And Angel Island is, an immigration station.
right.
So before people came into the country, they would stop there, and then they would be, interrogated and medically examined and all sorts of annoying things. So, this will tell you that story. You could listen if you wanted to pick up the headset. You could hear the stories about it. A big thing here is Paper Sons and Daughters, and that's the name for what it was called when. So like, let's say your uncle knows someone in America,
Yeah.
right? And you want to come here. You would tell your uncle would give that guy your name and say, okay, my son, Jack's going to come to the U.S. right now.
Right.
Call him your son on paper. I'll pay you money for that, and then I'll make it up to you somehow. And then you would come in as his son, and then because families were allowed.
Ah, yeah.
So that was like one of the caveats to get into the country during after the 1882 Exclusion Act. There are a few ways you could do it. One was by a certain vocation. So that's why there was a proliferation of Chinese food restaurants and stuff, because that was one of the vocations that allowed you to have an immigration visa.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that was but it had to be of a certain high level of dining.
Okay.
Another one was a profession of certain types. So there's some high level business and medical professions that were allowed to come. Some certain education allowances too. So if you're a student of certain types, you come. And then if you're a family member, there are certain caveats some certain family members could come. So that's where the Paper Sons and Daughters came, is that if you were a citizen, you could come as the daughter of that person or son. Hence the Paper Sons and Daughters. They weren't real, but on paper they were. Yeah, there was a lot of racism around who brings disease and what causes disease, and so there's a lot of even today with the Kung flu that awful guy Trump, damn him, said that kind of language is very derogatory, and it has a precedent for racism. So there's a history of that, these people bring these diseases. It's like, well,
It's like something,
than other people, so. The other ones too, please. So we'll go through here and you kind of get a picture of, in here you can kind of get a picture of the war years. So World War I, World War II. And you get to see some really interesting people. So these were wartime service folks. People don't realize that Rosie the Riveters were also Chinese American and diverse people. They weren't just white people. The Rosie the Riveter picture, where you see the woman with "We Can Do It" and the strong arm. This was a Chinese American who was also a riveter and part of that group. So her name is Lonnie Yi Young, and her job was as a flanger, which I don't even know what that is. I guess someone who makes flanges. And this one is, let's see, I believe her name is
Hazel Ying?
Hazel Ying Lee.
Oh, wow.
And she was part of what's called the WASPs, and they were airplane pilots during the war, during the World War II, who were service providers. So they would probably run service. They weren't doing dogfights, with guns in the sky, but they were providing service of flying the planes and moving things back and forth and people. So interesting to just know that Chinese American women were involved in this way. She died in a plane crash.
Oh.
There's so many waves of inclusion. What does that mean to be included? Where do you bury your dead?
Right.
Does a military person get to bury their dead alongside other servicemen, even though they're a different race?
Right.
Up until that point, no. But then this person died, and her brother died in service to the U.S. military, and they fought to be included in that way. So, it's a really important, part of society. So. And then there's more to this whole show. You could spend all day learning about all this. This is the 1950s and 60s, talking about, civil rights era. So if you look over here, you get to see about civil rights era, and when you can, in 65, once the repeal of the quotas, happened. So 1882 was the Exclusion Act. And then in 43, I believe, was the repeal of the Exclusion Act. But the thing was, there was a quota of only 105 Chinese per year. 105 is nothing.
Right.
So functionally, it was not repealed until 1965 when President Johnson just said there's no quota system anymore, or significantly changed it. So that was called the Hart-Celler Act.
Oh, wow.
And so President Johnson removes references to race and national origins from the U.S. immigration law. So that's when families like my family, my mother, who's from Taiwan, but she's Chinese, she came here after that, and I was born here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I love this photograph. This is the Low family portrait from 1961. The photograph is in the collection of the MoCA, so it's the Museum of Chinese in America in New York.
Okay.
But if you notice, what looks strange about this? Do you notice anything?
Is it this one right here? The cutout?
This and this, all the
It's
cutouts.
like it's all Photoshop.
Right? Looks like Photoshop. So they literally would cut out, look at this baby sitting here. They literally would cut out the photos and glue them on top of each other because they were not allowed to come to the country. So you'd have the Chinese family in China and the US family in the US, and they would make one family portrait because they weren't allowed to come.
Oh.
Isn't that a beautiful, like, well, not beautiful, but it's sad.
It is, yeah.
But
Persevered.
yeah, they persevered and they created these family portraits as best they could.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think that's a really beautiful sentiment and like indicative of a really difficult time. So
Nowadays you can do it with Photoshop.
yeah, so anyway, so we end here with these kind of like fun, this tells the whole story, so here's like, early labor, mining, kind of younger people coming into the country, during this kind of Victorian era. Here you get the 30s and 20s and 30s, families in China coming to New York to try to, establish themselves, or in San Francisco. Here's the war, 41, so World War II, Chinese Americans fighting in the war. So after this is 49, so it's like, communist rise, and then, more about labor in the 50s and 60s, Chinese laundrymen at that time, families fitting in, trying to be workers, trying to be Americans. And then, later after 65, the ability to travel and opening up more. So here you see in 68, folks are pledging allegiance to the flag, becoming U.S. citizens, getting to meet family first. I got to meet my grandmother for the first time because now the families are allowed to come.
Wow.
So this tells the whole history, people later, talking about their families, So this is specific about a family in the Bronx. And then going back and visiting family again later in life in Hong Kong and in Guangzhou, in
Toisan, yeah.
So, going back to family, family homes. So, and then if we continue this way, we have a little bit more left in the museum. Like I said, the museum worked very hard to collect these Jake Lees. And okay, so anybody who does lion dancing, do you ever do lion dancing? You ever practice lion dancing?
No.
So, lion dances, you've seen the lions though, they never have horns like this.
Right.
For like the Hakka, sometimes they'll have a unicorn, right? But they never have two horns. So this again is historically inaccurate, but it was something that, nobody knows why the artist did it, or at least if we do know why, we haven't like discussed it very much. It might be there's a book about this artist, but I haven't read it. Anyway, the point is he took his liberty of creating this, so it's not exactly historically accurate. So these pictures, here's a painting of the shrimp camp, right? So you get to see English and Chinese together. So there's very few artists in the 50s and the 60s in the United States who were Chinese American making work that depicted Chinese American life.
So was Jake Lee from the 50s? Oh, wow. Okay.
So these are painted in 1950. This one is painted in 1950s. Not the exact date isn't written there. Jake Lee lived from 1915 to 1991.
Oh, okay.
So we have collected 12 of these, which are watercolor on paper. And yeah. Okay, you guys, we're doing it on de-installation, so unfortunately, this board, you can't touch that. That's one of the pieces we're deinstalling, so I'm sorry about that.
No worries.
But like I said, we're in the middle of turning over the galleries, but you can look under and... Yeah, I'll do that.
Wow. This could be like hobbies, dude. Wow.
Yeah, look at this diagram. Living in Chinatown.
Wow.
SROs.
They still have those too.
Yeah.
Like penguin. Holy shit. Wow. That's gingerbread man right here. The Chinese gingerbread man. Yeah. It's made out of dantats. Wow.
Okay, so let me step in again and talk about this. So this meal is by James Leung, and it was made also in the 50s. He painted this with the San Francisco Arts Commission, so it was a public artwork, and it was outside. We brought it here, and basically there are different phases, eras, right? So here we see, China, like labor in China, and then coming to the dream of Zhoujinshan, right?
The
so
old
Gold
Mountain.
And then, we see families, we see labor here, building the railroads, mining for gold, like the main, the main coal factories that drew people here. And they're starting families. So,
Oh, wow.
after gold mining and into the, after the railroad, so that'd be in the 30s, you start to see families growing and more people coming. And then you get the celebration of culture right next to the war years. So those are the war years. So those would be, World War I, World War II era. So it's World War II specifically. So end of the 40s, going to the 50s, and this is the time of the model minority. Right? Now that's a negative statement, right?
Right.
Like we all know that model minority is a racist thing. It says that the Chinese are toothless, they are, don't care, they're willing to be second class, all this stuff that the model minority implied is built into this. And I have problems with that because we're trying to combat that. But in the 50s when this was happening, they were saying, we're not a threat. Don't exclude us. And allow my family to come. So it was like the Chinese were doing everything they could to appear to be humble and to appear to be good citizens so that families could come. So, at the time, being the model minority at the time, it had social implications that we don't share today. And so now we have to come up with what would be the seventh panel here.
Andrew Yang.
Is it Andrew? Is it Jeremy Lin? Is it a cool artist? Is it a dancer? Is it, who is it? Is it an architect? What is that seventh panel? I mean, we all have our seventh panel. You're the seventh panel, I'm the seventh panel. So what we're trying to do now is do a series of artist talks around this called the seventh panel. That every 4 months, we have another artist being like, hey, what's up? This is what I think for this seventh panel. Like I'm working with this one DJ. I've been in communication with him. His name is DJ Word out of LA. He's Chinese American, super cool guy. I would love to have him tell us through music what that seventh panel is. Who is like the diverse Chinese American or diverse American that represents that? So anyway, that's where we're at, and that concludes our tour.
Wow.
So this area is our archive room. It's again, we're reorganizing everything. So we have, we need to ask your forgiveness again because it's quite messy up here.
This is amazing already.
Yeah, so as you can see, museums rarely get the opportunity to just change over everything. So what we're doing is...
Oh no, that's for hitting...
What we're doing here is this is our archive room, and you can see it was completely disorganized. It still looks disorganized, but it's not actually. There's a ton of things like these boxes that we have, which are like some of them have authentic histories, or we can date them to an actual year and who used them. But obviously these are sales product boxes. Some of these things I can't open it, but this one right here is a trunk from the 1800s that somebody moved here from China, from Hong Kong, and brought their trunk. And it says in Chinese the history of the trunk because it's
1800s.
It's like 1860s. So somebody came with that trunk, and it's like the label from Hong Kong is Xianggang, or how do you say Hong Kong?
Hong Kong.
Yeah. Okay. So
Shanghai.
it says exactly, and it says that, and then it says. The name of the family, and the port destination is Zhoujinshan, and then it says some other things. Wow. All in Chinese. As a label, and the label's on it too, the original tag from it. Wow. So that's wrapped up like that. And then, so throughout this place, there's a ton of artifacts, that we're just trying to deal with right now. Books, various small little, artifacts like this. This is probably.
Wow.
What is this here? I should be wearing gloves, but kind of have these little medicine bottles.
Oh wow. There's still stuff in there too.
Yeah. Can you read what that says?
That is Ying Tong On something Yao. It's some kind of oil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of the ointment.
Yeah. Wow.
So we have a ton of this kind of really interesting artifacts.
And what is this right here though? The old
bottle of whiskey. So that one, nobody knows if that's an authentic bottle from that time period or if it's a prop. But I think it's just an old bottle of whiskey that somehow found its way into our collection. Nobody knows what to do with this. Someday we'll drink it, I think.
I think our people drank whiskey, but maybe I don't know.
Should be some baijiu.
They drink very smart.
That's definitely alcohol. Yeah.
Wow.
So, there's if you go this way, I'm really proud of this area down here because it's completed. We're not done, but this column is done. This row is perfect.
Wow.
So this is what it's going to look like.
So these are all like new stuff that you bought to like store stuff?
Yeah, exactly. So if you were to look inside these, you would see.
Ah.
Oh, wow.
I'm not going to touch these because I don't have gloves on, but these are, beauty pageant photos, from Miss Chinatown back in the 50s and stuff. So
You can make this into a book?
yeah, or an exhibition, or a lot of stuff. So
Wow.
there's some really cool stuff throughout this whole museum.
Uh-huh.
But like I said, we are in the middle of reorganizing, which is a very rare opportunity.
Yeah.
That's the one good thing about the virus is like nobody's coming, so we can like stop
Yeah, now it's
and just how do we do this right? Let's do this right.
do it once, do it right.
Yeah, exactly. You want to show us something else? Yeah. What do you want to show us?
He's like, here's the exit.
So there's an ice cream shop down the street.
Wow.
I think you want to show us the tower. You want to show us the tower, Theo?
Tower.
Wow.
So this building has 2 towers.
Two towers?
This is the south tower.
Wow.
Right now, it's not being used for anything. It's kind of a meeting room. It's not technically, handicap accessible, but I use this for my office too. It's like a really good tower.
Oh, wow.
Nice view of Sutro Tower over there and Transamerica Pyramid over this way.
Wow. This
First time here.
This is my first time here.
Dude, we grew up here and we didn't know this existed.
I went to school like across the street. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you mentioned that. Now is that the one on Clay?
I went to Zhonghua Zhongxue.
Okay. Oh really? That one right there?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, guys, that was the Chinese Historical Society of America Museum. What do you guys think? Anyways, for me, it was kind of crazy because here's something I want to show you guys. This thing right here. This is actually my elementary school. We used to have recess here. And if you look here, that's Cameron House. They have a really nice basketball court upstairs. But it's crazy for me because here's my elementary school. And then right here, that's the museum right there. And I had no idea this existed when I was a kid and even growing up. So yeah, like Justin said, the museum is actually a relatively unknown place. It's a hidden gem. So if you're interested in Chinese American history, or if you want to check out some cool historical stuff, then definitely come here next time when you're here in Chinatown. Also, I'll put the link of the museum and also the link of the store here so you can buy some cool merch, like those posters. I know I'm gonna get one and I know Coach can get 2 to 1 up me. But yeah, anyway, so that's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Until my next videos, Jack's off and Jack's out.